Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Neil Smith, joined by my new friend and new to this podcast, Josh Brown from Soul Heart. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So I have an exciting announcement for this podcast, and we'll get to that later in the podcast in this conversation. But Josh, you and I got to know each other in January, and I've learned a lot about Soul Heart and your background, and we share a lot of similar background, and it's fun too when you're like, how did we not know each other before now? And we've been trying to record this podcast probably for 4 or 5 months, it seems like. And so Josh is one of the most brilliant marketing minds I've ever met, with a heart to serve churches and ministries, and just a kingdom entrepreneur. And so, Josh, for those that don't know you, can you share a little bit about your story and the Soul Heart journey?
Yeah, definitely. So again, thanks for having me on, man. It's just been super cool getting to know you and all of your passions and energies. And like you said, we have so many common friends in the same exact ecosphere, and somehow we never crossed paths. So really cool background story for just even how we got connected randomly.
Yeah.
But yeah, long story short, I grew up kind of in the buckle of the Bible Belt, the backwoods of Kentucky. Grew up on a farm there. My cash crops were, I started 9 years old, raising pumpkins, had cows, raised tobacco at one point. That's a thing in Kentucky for those of you that aren't a part of that area. And anyway, just caught 2 bugs early on in life. One was, became very passionate about being involved in my church. Every year in my church, you could get a shiny Sunday school attendance pin. And so I was after that pin. I actually didn't miss a day of Sunday school for 10 years. Wow. I thought I was going after something monumental, but they just give you a little pin with a year on it every year. And so anyway, and then at the same time, it's this concept of running my own business. I mean, my, dad wasn't a farmer, but he farmed, and my grandfather was a full-time farmer. My uncle became one, and I grew up on a farm. Everything about that life was amazing. And in the middle of all of that is where I really got a foundation for business and faith. And that's kind of what led to years later, actually my story, really where it took off in terms, I would say, the most growth in what was God calling me to do early on, because that was such a pivotal point. Even thinking of the name of our company right there behind, Soul Heart, comes out of Deuteronomy, obviously. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. But yeah, early on in life, I had this great foundation, but right when I started to jump into the real world was when 9/11 happened. And I'll just never forget, I've been recently baptized. I've come to know the Lord, and just was kind of not sure about my faith, and come to know the Lord, get baptized, 9/11 happens, and my faith spirals in all kinds of different ways. And all through college, that was a key moment for me, because I began to pursue this path of what I thought was, heading down the road of I was getting a degree in journalism, communications, learning about design and marketing, and just little bits and pieces of everything, which led to a foundation to later on ultimately becoming not just somebody who served in ministry, was a youth leader for a number of years, but then somebody who stepped out of that world to become a business owner who then serves ministries. Yeah. And here we are coming up on year 10 as of next month, and God is good. He's faithful. Started in the corner of the bedroom after leaving a nonprofit that I was working at the time. And yeah, now we have a team all across the country. It's been pretty incredible. And somewhere in the middle, I meet this guy, Neil, who's a good friend of mine now, of course. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the background of the story. And the purpose of Soul Heart when we started was actually because I'd always resonated with Apple. Years and years ago, they created this media campaign called Think Different. And I'm sure you remember those. To this day, if you ever hear there's this video, it's the Crazy Ones. And there's an actual commercial called The Crazy Ones. Then there's the one that Steve Jobs himself recorded his voice with.
Yep.
To this day, I get chills. It just something struck a chord. Like I was that guy obsessed with Apple before anyone knew who they were. And it was because you could do such amazing things on the computer. Like you could bring art to life and all kinds of stuff. And so anyway, yeah, that was like my foundation was like I really understood story. I understood, like I resonated really well with like moving pictures and video and all kinds of stuff. And so I just dabbled in the areas I was passionate about, man. And, worked in nonprofit and ministry, graphic design and marketing, and started to rub shoulders with people that were doing incredible things. And just over time, I was like, man, I really feel like this is something I'm being called to do. Yeah. And what could that look like? And then one day, and I'll kind of end it with this part, but like one day I heard Pastor Craig Rochelle preach a sermon. He was our pastor at the time. And he said, to step towards your destiny, you have to step away from your security. And my wife and I looked at each other, and I was like, this is what God's calling us to do. This is that moment. And we both knew, like, we didn't have to say anything. We both knew. And right about 10 years ago, put in that notice, my job, and said, I'm about to start a business. They're like, what are you going to do? I don't actually know. I just know it's going to be something to do, have something to do with digital marketing, media, video, web. I didn't even know. Like, I just loved it all. And so that's what developed a passion, which gave a foundation for a company.
I love that so much. This only reaffirms my bromance for you, in that I'm still setting up my new office here in Brooklyn, but in my last office I had three things on the wall. I had the Great Commission, go to all the earth, the Great Commandment, to love God and to love others, and the Steve Jobs quote of only those that are crazy, the crazy ones,
Yeah.
And I think that stirred me as well, that Steve Jobs message of like, man, we're the crazy ones that think we can change the world. And I think at the end of the day, and the Great Commission calls us to go into all the world, and digital marketing has opened up opportunities for churches that have never existed historically to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. And I think it also, though, gives us opportunities to take the gospel to our neighbor in new and unique ways 24/7, that we don't have to wait till people come in our building to minister to them and to reach them. And we have just such incredible kingdom opportunities in front of us. And I love how you have, intentionally, help ministries achieve that, and help businesses and all kinds of different organizations. So we met primarily because you were in the process of selling a business and a business that you started to serve churches. And that business is a company called Churchpress, which is a WordPress website platform. And you have selected me because you had several people that were interested in acquiring that business from me to be the new steward of that platform, which I'm really honored about. So I want to talk about that. But maybe before we talk about why me or why that transition, talk about why you built Churchpress to start with. What was the foundation and the beginnings of that company out of Soul Heart?
Yeah, so great question. Soul Heart in the early stages, because of my background, we naturally worked with nonprofits and churches. And what would happen is in the early stages, I took anything and everything that came across the plate. You know how it is. It's like someone's like, I got $1, you got an hour. Sign me up, we're doing it. Let's do this thing. And then as I began to grow, I really learned okay, I have to set some boundaries. I can't just work 24/7. I had a phrase I used a lot of the time early on in the stage of Soul Heart's growth, which was, I feel like I've just created a lot more jobs for myself, and that's okay because it's allowing us the freedom that we wanted to. We were traveling a lot. We traveled through 42 states with 3 kids, 5 and under, in those first 2 years, just scratching that at our door. And, that's just, it was a value to our family. And basically what ended up happening during that was what was I good at? Really, really good at. And I had learned how to build websites. And in fact, that was one of my big aha moments, was when I kind of turned in my notice and I was like, this is the direction I'm going to go. And then it was now what do I do? How do I get this business off the ground? And I got a call from a company, and it was a nonprofit ministry. We were just talking about the power of the web, the power of the future, because I was, really familiar with that. I knew basic HTML and knew a little bit of PHP because I had worked in WordPress for a couple of smaller churches, and we didn't do that on my job, but like I knew enough about the ecosystem. And at that time, it was powering like 25% of websites on the web.
Yeah.
So it was like, there's an opportunity here, but I just could really figure it out. And the more so this first company, they reached out to me, and they're basically like, I was looking at like, what do I need to survive? And that's what I charged. It was like, all right, if I want this to go on for 3 months, what do I need to survive? Put food on the table for my family, not thinking about anything else. And we do it, and I go through this web project, and I just start approaching it, in a way that I've never done before, which was like, let's analyze what we have, and let's look at the data, and let's look at the information, and all these things that I'd always thought about, but hadn't really gotten a massive project to do, and fell in love with that part and the design, which I was already good at design. I kind of did a lot of, you're a youth leader, man. You got to do graphic design, right? Like, if you don't design your own t-shirts, then, something's up, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but during that process, they were like, well, could you code it as well? And I was like, at that time, you couldn't just type into AI and get your code output, right?
Right.
There was no drag and drop systems. You literally had to write HTML or PHP at the time as the language. And so I started doing that and building these things out. And I started seeing like, wow, there's a difference in the way that people interact with something that's beautiful and meaningful versus something that looks like you just, got it out of the bottom of the kitchen sink, right? Like the garbage disposal area. That's where everybody just throws their stuff. And it started to resonate with me at first from just, man, wouldn't it be cool if churches had websites that looked better? I mean, everybody was using the lightweight Ezekiel templates back then.
Yes.
And, they just looked like they were built in the 1960s. They just did not seem to be websites that would resonate with people. They were hard to use. They were clunky. They all looked the same. Everything was templatized. And I was like, none of those websites look like the first impression you would want to receive from guests coming to your church. And because I was a believer and I was also very involved in our church, I started asking the question, like, what would it look like if we built something for this, like, very specific niche area of the world, which was like small churches? I started doing research, and I found out that, like, I forget what the numbers are off the top of my head, but it was like 85% of churches in America had 200 or less people.
Yeah.
And I got to know churches because they would come to me for graphic design, and I would be like, well, why don't you put it on your website? Oh, we don't have a website. Or we have a website, but it's just for a phone number and a map, and that's it. That's all anyone cares about. And about that time is really when like ads were taken off across the world. SEO is becoming a big thing. And for me, I just looked at the playing field of culture, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool? Like, to your point earlier, like, wouldn't it be cool if 24/7 your church was doing ministry to the world?
Yes.
And I was like, what could that really look like? And the vision for Churchpress began to kind of come in fruition around that, of a platform that was literally just a website, but was built in a way that could be a digital outreach, like a 24/7 digital outreach to your community and to the world. Because what happened is I started building websites for small churches, pennies on the dollar. Like, I'd build it and then charge them like $15 a month for hosting. That was it. And then what I began to see was all these countries around the world that weren't just visiting the website, but they were listening to the sermons, or they were reading the material. And so I began telling churches, I was like, what do people around the world want to know? They want to know questions like, who is God? Like, a lot of churches are like, come see our church. Here's our building. Here's our thing. And people in the world are like, why does God allow bad things to happen against people? Who is God? What is salvation? They're asking basic questions. And most churches answer those questions with a giant block of text about their beliefs that no one in history has ever read, never looked up all the little supporting verses. Like, nobody in the real world actually cares. And so as we began to do all of this and I began to formulate it, I was like, well, could there be a way then that we could create content that would resonate with churches and then help them to do what no one else in the market was serving at the time? And what was the do? It was spread the gospel further, faster. That was my mantra. And so that led, because my background, writing, journalism, design, web, video, like anything that I can do media-wise would come in. And I wrote a guide that was called How to Use Instagram to Spread the Gospel Further, Faster. And that thing, I posted it on Instagram stories and said, DM me your email if you want to get the guide sent to you. And I can't even remember. I mean, it was several hundred people that reached out, DM'd me. I created a Slack group overnight because I was like, I want to bring these people together. Let's chat about it. And at the time, even like Saddleback Church in California, their marketing director hears it, sees it, reaches out to me. Like, I have people at churches all across the country. And then it starts going around the world. And I'm like, what is going on right now? And I had, dude, it was crazy. I had lots of pastors in Ireland, like seeking counsel. And I'm like, I'm building websites. Like, what is even happening? And I just stepped into that ministry and began to ask questions, get feedback, and understand what are the things that people are struggling with from the ministry perspective in terms of getting graphics built, getting, basically really came down to getting a website that wasn't just a brochure, getting a website that actually helped them do digital outreach and evangelism. And when that began to click for people, it was like, we've got something here. And so I just started signing up church after church after church, expanding it, and then eventually built a full automated mechanism to just help people. But it was all about serving churches so the gospel could be spread further, faster. And God just opened the doors from there. So
and let's for this audience, we probably have a more technical. Probably half our audience will understand the technical a little bit because I geek out about some of the things. And so one of the things that I fell in love with is both your priority around the messaging, the beauty of it, that you want to build beautiful websites. And then I think at the end of the day, what really sold me on the platform is the searchability. At the end of the day, if Google can't find it, it doesn't exist on the internet today. And so how did you prioritize that? In many ways, it feels like a tension. It almost feels like it has to be an either or. But how did you integrate kind of the both and to create this kind of holistic platform?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I would say that a couple of things. Like the first thing that was super helpful was one of my best friends that was helping me with the platform. He runs a lot of our Google ads, is also a pastor of a small church, Southern Baptist Church, in the middle of Gold Canyon, Arizona, right? And he and I came together. We really just would talk, and we would create content, and we would put a foundation on like what the biblical truth was, and then could we connect that into the digital world? So, for instance, Jesus says, "Go into all the world." Well, what does that look like? Where is Jerusalem? Where is Samaria in a modern context? Where's the ends of the earth? Well, I had a church of senior adults in Quartzsite, Arizona, that I think in the summer runs like 15 people. And they build their website, they put their stuff out there, and we had people around the world, parts of like unreached areas of the world, that had language translators on their computers to then find that church and send to them and say, like, please pray for this in my life, and make those like literally otherworldly connections. It was, and so as I began to see that, I began to really formulate the idea of, okay, well, how do you create not just a platform, but a platform that has an ability to actually have content that can be found in Google and then be showing up in search results all over the place, not just in a local context, but also in a local context, right? So we began to come up with plans for churches, and not every one of them, went for it, because a lot of them, this was so new. It was like, why do we need a page on our website about who is God? Like, that's a very generic term. we have it answered with 500 Bible verses attached to it. Like, isn't that good enough? And we begin to be like, well, actually, it's not that, it's not that we're saying the word isn't good enough. It's saying the presentation of the gospel is a giant white screen with a bunch of black text and blue links. And is that an attractive presentation? No. What's attractive as a presentation is maybe white screen and a video and some text and some clear calls to action for, if this is resonating with you, then here's the very next steps you can take. Now, a lot of churches, what they'll do is they'll come up with, I think it was like plan your visit concept, right?
Yep.
Because they're very focused on come in, plan your visit. We don't want you to show up and get like, have like the redheaded cousin Eddie showing in and, everything's weird all of a sudden, right? Like everything for us was about how do you allow a church to communicate what this church is really about, like the type of teaching that you have, the type of ministry and atmosphere and education and just all of this, and either give them a blueprint to create content that can help them be found locally and around the world. And so that was kind of like the formulation part. And as you know, like we're talking technical. So Tim is an SEO expert. He's my guy out there. It's the pastor of Gold Canyon or out in Gold Canyon. So he comes in. I focus on web content, all of this. He focuses just on SEO, things like Google My Business. Like we started helping churches even with understanding that, like the basics, because so many of them would go to other, try other platforms. They're like, yeah, the hub, come in, we're going to build kiosks, we're going to do all this stuff. And it was like, actually, most people just want answers to their problems.
Yep.
And even from like sermon titles, helping people understand like your sermon series about the overflow. That's what I've seen so many times, right? It's like overflow of the Spirit. Like no one's searching on Google overflow and thinking, how do I hear a message of God? Like, what are the things that culture is actually looking for? Not saying I'm trying to be always topical, but people are searching for answers to their problems. We know as believers who the actual answer is, Jesus Christ. Like, there is no other, right? But as a church, you have a very unique ability, if you have a website that can be found easily in Google, to create content that can answer, the questions, the problems that people in your community have and people around the world, And so that's really what was driving so much of it. And even today, it was really interesting. So we were talking to our team recently, and our content team wrote an article like a week ago, and we're number one for a complete search term in Google for an article on a website that doesn't have a ton of traffic. And it's like, it's really not brain surgery. Like when you do this stuff, look at keyword research, look at the data, look at the difficulty. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and you don't even have to do the crazy white hat, black hat, SEO, all that kind of stuff. No, you just simply have to create great content, and things are going to answer people's problems. So.
Yes, I think, and one of the things I love, Josh, about the way you frame that is you got to create great content. And I think the mistake that I see a lot of churches making, and especially with social media, is they think that social media is going to solve their problems. And the problem is maybe they just aren't creating great content. Maybe they're not a great church to even visit. And so at the end of the day, a great website and great social media is not going to fix your church. But I think what it is going to do, if you do have a great church and you do have great content, and you do have a great message, this is going to amplify those things. And this is going to help you reach more people. And I believe, like if God's called you to do this, that you are creating your content, you are doing the good things. But it's not a big secret. It's basically just, it's packaging of your message. And I think that's what you have continued to do over and over again through different mediums and most specifically through the Churchpress platform. So let's talk about the transition. You decided to move your company in a different direction and make this platform available for me to acquire. And I was very grateful because I know when we're putting it out there, you had a lot of interest. What made you, choose me and I apologize to the others. I'm sorry that those didn't get it.
Sorry, no.
And but I think you really saw this, I think, as a stewardship opportunity. That's the way I look at it. As God put this on your heart, you built it, you served a lot of churches through it, and now you're be called in a different direction and allowing me to steward this platform moving forward. But what led to you making that decision to trust me with your baby that you built?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was really interesting because we had a lot of traction. I started kind of feeling like the Lord was leading in a way of like, hey, you built this, you got it where you need it to be. But in order to continue to grow Soul Heart at the rapid pace that it was growing, I couldn't keep my focus on this because it was such a personal pet project of mine.
Yeah.
Right. And so my team was requiring more my attention and just like how it is. When you're running a full-fledged business, there is a lot. When you've got employees, they're all across the country, and there's a lot that goes into it. And I felt like I was doing a disservice to the platform itself by not giving it more attention. And the weird thing about it too, in that space, it's like it was profitable on day one. It had nothing to do with like money or anything like that. It was simply, I wanted to really see this go to a new level, new height. And with all the new technologies coming out, you've got AI stuff on the rise like crazy. You've got the ability for, people like, I think Apple this week is like Vision Pro comes out, and you're like seeing all kinds of mind-blowing things that are going to be potentially possible in the future. And I started just looking at all of that focus, and I was like, man, I really do believe I need to invest solely in Soul Heart, which is still serving, ministries and nonprofits. Like that's largely a lot of what we do. We do other, businesses as well. We have like 6 different like business and nonprofit parachurch ministry categories. But the level of attention I was requiring was so much. And over here, I was like, man, if I can just pray about it and see, like, is there anyone who feels as passionate about something as I do, who could be a right fit to, like you said, steward it, carry the torch forward, and like see this platform become something that can spread the gospel further faster. The reason I believe so much in the platform, because are there other ones out there? 100%. Yeah, there's plenty of website templates built on platforms, proprietary platforms, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for me, what I often found was churches, if a media person came in, or like as they grew, or if you had a volunteer, whenever someone would come in, they change something.
Yeah.
And if you chose a platform, you'd have to wait till the contract ended before you could do the next thing. With WordPress, which is what it was built on, you can do whatever you want. You can create your own apps. You can integrate other services. You can connect it to, automated blog posting. You can connect it to post for you on social media. The sky's the limit. It could literally be a one source solution. And you can connect it to like CRMs like HubSpot and like post everything direct to it from there. Like there's just so many endless possibilities. Yeah. And so as I began to look at that, I was like, man, I am just not doing this. Like I'm doing a disservice to the platform. And so I put it out there, and I got a lot of attention right away. I was actually kind of honored and shocked at the same time. We have multiple people. There's a lot of people in the app development area. They're like, we get so many people like wanting websites. Like we want to acquire this, bring it in. And all I really did was, said like, let's hop on the phone and like, I want to hear your story. Yeah. And, there was a couple that just really, they were like, everything sounded so great, but something in my spirit was like, I just don't know this is the right move. And then you reached out and you sent me something. I can't even remember what it was. And immediately I was like, something about this guy sounds different. And I was like, let's hop on a call. Like I'm available this afternoon. And you're like, me too. And come to find out, like late evening for you, opposite ends of the country. Yeah. And we just hit it off right away. Like your personality, demeanor, the way that you see the world, the types of kind of background. Like we had such similar background in so many different areas. So I'd actually been to been to your church several years earlier. Like you have been in places or connected to people that I was connected with, and there's just so much commonality of spirit. And that's what I just find so much. Like you have to be, if you're in tune with the spirit, when the spirit gives that commonality, then you know, like you've met a brother you can trust. And that to me was like the most meaningful thing. So I think we hopped on a call with Tim as well. And I was like, hey man, I'm pretty sure this is what I want to do, but once you like talk to hit it off right away. And at that point we kind of knew like, all right, this is the way God's leading. And I think we had that combo. It was like, let's do this thing. So
yes,
thus began the transition.
Yeah. And it's been a lot of fun. And I think it's been a lot of, it has been an honor, that you felt the same. And I think it was a mutual connection where it was just like, yeah, this is right. And it reminds me so much of even this podcast. This podcast was DJ Chuang started this podcast 12 years ago, and 10 years ago, I was literally at dinner at Jay Cranda's house from Saddleback Church, and DJ said, I think I'm ready to pass the torch. Nils, do you want to take it? And Jay was like, hey, I want to do it too. And Jay and I ended up kind of taking the torch and of this podcast. And it's been a labor. DJ was in New York here about 6 months ago. We had dinner, and he was just like, man, I love how you've stewarded it. And I said, he didn't use the term steward, but how you've taken it and ran with it way beyond, what I ever had a vision for it. And that's my goal with this. The way we got connected was, kind of so random, but it at the end of the day, it just has felt so right from day one. And I think simultaneously, you and I both had conversations of like, man, we've both taken some hits personally that have, our conversation started in January, I believe. And it's just taken a long time to get to this moment. And for many different reasons, but I think at the end of the day, I believe so much in what God put on your heart when you built this. I believe in the technology that it's bringing, and I believe in serving the church. And I also believe in other people that have similar platforms, that it's, the church getting more good technology and having options is a good thing. And so this might not be the right platform for every church. And it's not going to be. We won't have the capacity to help every single church. But I do believe, and the deeper I've dug into the technology and the platform, is we've begun to prepare it, for a new launch. Is that this technology has the potential to, support thousands of churches with a really dynamic website experience that's going to help in a lot of ways. And one of the biggest tests, Josh, that I use in social media is, can my dad use it? And my dad's a 65-year-old pastor in Cleveland, Texas, of a church of about 100. And, his technical skills don't go much beyond paint when it comes to,
yes.
If it can't be done in Word, or Paint, he can't go much past that. And he, and so we're in the process of helping him build his own website on Churchpress. And so you can actually check out his website at fmcleveland.com. We're going to put the pressure on him to be done by the time we release this podcast with his site. But if my dad can do it, you can do it. And if he can build his church website on Churchpress, anybody can do it. And I think one of the things that I love is this platform, I believe, is dynamic enough for the largest mega church and simple enough and affordable enough for the smallest church. And that's our objective and goal in stewarding this platform. And so I cannot wait to get this out. So churchpress.co is the website if you want to go check it out. And Josh, I just want to communicate to you just my gratitude for you trusting me. My gratitude for you putting years of your sweat and your, investment, financial investment, and your, soul heart investment into this technology platform, and allowing me to steward it moving forward. And I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to tell you the stories and share with you the Google Analytics reports of, the Churchpress websites are reaching millions of people in this way, because you've seen it, already have great fruits. But we're gonna keep investing into it and keep expanding, hopefully the impact of this technology, as you know, Josh, it takes it's not done. Like at the end of the day, it's never done. And so we're just going to keep investing into it, keep developing it, because the internet is ever changing. But the infrastructure you built is built for, I believe, for the decade to come. And it's hard to think past 5 years in the technology, but I do believe that this technology will be able to build on it for the next decade. I'm not going to look much beyond a decade, but that you could build your church website on this, and it will accomplish your goals from a digital engagement standpoint, and a searchability standpoint, and a ministry standpoint, to move people to deeper engagement in your church. So Josh, I just want to rearticulate that. Thank you for trusting me. As you kind of, this is that kind of final baton passing of us taking it, now going public with the new direction of Churchpress. What's your hope for where we take it? What do you hope you see 2-3 years from now with Churchpress?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And again, I'm just so excited, man, because I'm excited that you guys you caught that vision super early on, and feel that almost responsibility to carry that torch forward. And it's not so much because it's like just a cool platform you can build upon, but the fact that it's literally the single best way. I mean, WordPress now powers like 50% of websites across the internet. And it's not just that it's WordPress, because anybody can go and do that, but it's how we built the infrastructure around it, and the types of ways that we built it to extend into the future. And for me, I think there's two things that I get really passionate about. Number one is the fact that this is a platform that can, and not just platform, but ecosystem that can literally support thousands, hundreds of thousands of churches around the entire globe. Yeah. And like, to your point, a mega church and a church that we've literally, that's been a client for years in the Churchpress ecosystem in Quartzsite, Arizona, 15 people in the summer, 30 people in the summer, depending upon the year. And an all senior adults, 70 and older, right? Like the ability to have extendability like that. What's really interesting is, I always look every year, who are the fastest growing churches in the country? And what's really, really interesting to me is so many of those churches are actually building upon the same tool sets that we chose, so many years ago. And now they're like almost innovating with it and building extendable areas of that ecosystem. And so when I look at the future, man, it's like, I thought I knew what the future had with some of the stuff, and then Apple's like Vision Pro, here's the new future, augmented spatial computing, right? Yes. And I see two things, right? First, I see the ability for us to engage with content, sermons, church messages, all of that in a variety of ways, not just sitting down at a desk looking at a phone, but rather out everywhere, right? Yes. Like there's, who knows, like you could create your own personalized, unique environment to browse the web. I think it's just mind-blowing what this is going to lead to. But then the second aspect of it, and really, one of the drivers behind what I was doing initially was, yes, it was like see the gospel spread further, faster, go into all the world. But when I began to do that, I began to look at like, okay, for every cell that came into Churchpress, we wanted to give like 10% of all profits away. And I started looking like, well, what would be a good, type of company to resonate with this? And what came to mind for me was Bible translation, because as we're getting the gospel and the word out into the world with all of these churches, there's actually tons of movement going on in the Bible translation area. And because of technology, I mean, it's going to be in the 2030s that every single language on earth is going to have a copy of a language translation copy of scripture started in their heart language. Like, to me, it's so pivotal because, even in the Bible, I've always felt like, we never know if the return of the Lord is coming or anything like that, but I've always felt like everyone on earth will have an ability to physically hear in their language the word of God, not just, see the stars, but physically hear God's word translated to their language. And so seeing all this going on, seeing technology going, seeing the ability to have a platform that can not only be extendable, but as these tools get developed and translation becomes more readily available. I think Google was one of the first ones to have the earbuds, and you could put them in your ear, choose your language, and then as somebody talks in English, I could hear in Spanish. Like, that's mind blowing. And we are on the cusp of like some crazy technology with AI coming out and with spatial computing hitting in that same breath, and the speed of innovation. In fact, I was reading not too long ago, the chat GPT is the thing, right? Yeah. I mean, everyone's into it. You've got it on your phone, your device. Microsoft's trying to like corner the whole market. It went from a nonprofit to a for-profit. I mean, for OpenAI, and just everything going down. And Elon's been warning us for years to like be nice to robots. I always say please and thank you, just in case Theory ever, comes back to kill us all. But just joke on that, of course. But the reality is, with knowledge, right? When you look through the Bible, like there's so much Proverbs about knowledge and wisdom and, the personification of all of that. And then you also see the flip side early on in Genesis, when like what knowledge can actually do, it can destroy, when people are going after knowledge in the wrong way. And so what I'm seeing now, though, and actually not just what I'm seeing, what the technology is doing, used to knowledge in the world would double like every 10 to 20 years. It essentially like the amount of knowledge in the world would double 10 to 20 years. With the rise of the internet, that sped up, right? If it was 20 years before, then with the internet it was 10. If it was 10 years before, the internet was 5. Like drastically changed it. With the first version of ChatGPT, it was every 2 weeks.
Yep.
And with the second version, because the first version was here, second version was like massive. Then they connected it to the internet recently, and now knowledge is actually doubling like every 12 to 20 hours. Like, imagine the implications. Now, and the beauty of this entire ecosystem and platform, I think, is as all of this stuff in culture starts to happen, how are everyday churches going to stay true to the gospel, continue to have not just a message that's resonating with people or, leading those people to Christ, but also serving as that digital evangelism tool in all of this new technology era that we're about to encounter. Like, I think we're on the cusp of some radical new ways of communicating in our world. The whole, like, you can navigate with your eyes. I mean, what does that have implications? Like, as I just scroll down the Bible app, right, it's just going to automatically scroll as I look with my eyes. I mean, there's so many things, but at the end of the day, it's like a platform that can be stable, secure, and give people the ability to, create something in a singular location that can extend into all these different ways, and that is centered on the hope of the gospel. And dude, when we connected immediately, it wasn't just there was common brotherhood and business similarities and all of that, but it was like, man, know your heart for the Lord resonated so much, and I was like, this is the way. Pulling the Mandalorian in there, of course, you have to, but like, this is the way, because what you can do from there, we'll stay in touch with all of this. I'll be reading you on, sending people your way. Just a massive fan of the future success. And like you said, it's not going to be for everyone, and that's okay, because there's every year hundreds, millions, thousands of churches are getting started. And right now there's such a cultural shift, especially in Gen Z, to like move away from organized religion and what that looks like. And I think that, things like the Asbury Revival, all the stuff that we've seen in culture, Greg Laurie, I think they had a baptism service, 5,000 people in La Jolla. I mean, dude, it's just like, even in the midst of craziness and culture and evil, like, God is doing a work, man. And he is using everything that maybe Satan is meaning for evil, he's using it for good and for the good of those who love him, to bring him all the glory. So, kind of to sum it all up, if this thing just continues to bring God glory, man, you've hit it on the on the coffin right there. So just keep that in mind. It's all about helping those churches to reach the world with the gospel, and that's it's the platform to do it. So anybody who's listening, you have to sign up. If you got a church, you're on that cusp, you're in the mode of like, I'm thinking about this one, thinking about that one, like guarantee you, your church will not only be set well and have a good trajectory and future with Churchpress, but you're going to be able to get found in search results now when things start going audio, like everything that's going to get created into the future, it's all going to be built into this space, this ecosystem, and you're going to have the rock solid support backing of a team that's like boots on the ground, really seeing how exactly culture is changing and how your website can actually make an impact in those areas. So
I love it. I love it.
Short, I think summary, right?
I think, Josh, I think those people that listen to this podcast regularly can now understand why we have such an affinity for each other, because our hearts and our minds are so aligned. And I promise, to continue to move the platform in this direction, to stay on that front edge of technology where this was built with such forward thinking thought. It can easily technology get behind, and we're not going to allow that to happen to this platform. And so I'm going to make that commitment to you, Josh, and to everyone that's listening, and everyone who becomes a customer and uses Churchpress into the future, that we're going to keep pushing the limits to make sure that it's simple and that it's functional, and that everyone can use it, and that it's affordable, but it's also innovative and keeping up with the trends of technology. Josh, as we wrap up, for those that want to connect with you and learn more about Soulheart, where should they go?
Yeah, so our website's just soulheart.co. I got into that mode. I was always looking for how do you shorten, the amount of characters you use and everything. So I bought into the whole .co craze. I love it. Yep. Churchpress.co for you guys.
Yep.
Soulheart.co for us. You can find me on all the channels. Usually it's Josh Brown or official Josh Brown. Probably most active, Twitter, LinkedIn, that kind of thing. And honestly, like at the end of the day, there's some other projects we've been working on. And one of those is kind of to tell this larger story around the brand of Soulheart. Churchpress is a huge, significant part of that. And so I've actually started writing part of my book that's going to come out hopefully later this year. You never know the winds of change, but the whole concept is follow your soul heart, stop chasing your dreams, and start building them. Because I truly believe that so many people are just dream chasers, and instead what they need to be doing is boots on the ground, building the things that God has called you to build. And the more people that can get hands-on with their faith, with their calling, with their purpose, the world's just going to be a better place. And dude, we need it more now than ever. We need believers to step up, stand out, accomplish great things, and whatever the Lord's purpose for you in your life. And so I think that's kind of what's really cool. We've got a whole lot of stuff we're involved with as a company, but really on a personal level, like I just want to help people all over the world, especially, those that are believers. I want to see new believers come into the kingdom, but it's really those that are believers to not settle for second best, like to put all 110% into everything and stop chasing those dreams and just start building them, man.
I love it. Well, we will have you back on the podcast when that book is ready to release, and I can't wait to dig into that conversation as well. So Josh, thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone for listening. You can go to socialmedia.church for a link to all of Josh's social media handles, to soulheart.co, to churchpress.co, and to everything that we talked about here on this episode. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you again on the next episode.